Hi, I'm Steve Torres, the creator of LagAssist and Advanced Pickup and Bungee Tweaks. And in this video, I want to explain how the config for LagAssist works, and I want to try to help you to configure the plugin properly. This is because LagAssist has a very huge config file. It's one of the largest config files that plugins have. It has 411 lines, which is the most, I think, for anti-lag plugins at least, and it's a large sum for any plugin. And I'm doing this video because for some people the default configuration may not work as well, and this is because LagAssist is made to work with large networks, and this is how the default config is. Some people only want to have anti-lag plugins just to add an extra layer of optimization over their server, and because of that, the default configuration may not work or may be too aggressive for what they need. So in this video I want to explain what each setting does, and yeah, how you can properly configure LagAssist for what you need. Also, excuse me if I'm not speaking that well now, because I have a cold, and yeah, my nose is clogged and so on. Okay, so first off, we'll go to the smart cleaner. The smart cleaner is a pretty unrecommended feature because you shouldn't have to clear your mobs as long as your mobs spawn correctly. Paper spigot, or only paper, and spigot itself allow you to configure how many mobs can spawn. And this means that settings like cleaning mobs each 5 minutes or doing that or doing this are not really recommended, just because natural causes like new mobs in a chunk or mob spawned at night, those are fixed just by configuring spigot correctly. The smart cleaner is available in LagAssist for two reasons. First off, because people ask for it, and second off, because there are some limited uses for it. So, for example, let's say you have a server where people are allowed to spawn any entity unnaturally. Let's say you have a creative server and people can spawn any mob and so on. You may end up with a server that's so full of mobs that your server starts to lag. So in this case, the smart cleaner may work, and uh, may may really help, because it will simply, yeah, remove the mobs that you consider that players can place. Aside the smart cleaner, we have the mob manager. This one is more of a aggressive feature because it changes the way vanilla Minecraft works. It's very useful for some survival servers or some creative servers, but it obviously depends. Uh, the no armor stand gravity system just disables gravity from armor stands, and if you're using paper spigot, or paper, sorry, I'm not used to it, then it will actually disable the movement for armor stands, which is even better, and is a feature that Taco's Spigot had before it was basically abandoned, because all the features got added to paper. But obviously, they didn't add a setting in the config for armor stat gravity, so I said, well, let my plugin do that and make it so it uses paper to disable armor stand gravity. So this is a feature that requires paper, and that's not available by default on paper, at least for now. This slime splitting feature approximates how many drops you would get from slimes, and basically once you kill a large slime, it actually just gives you all the slime, and not only that, but it also approximates the health. So for example, um, let's say you have a very large slime. This plugin will set the large slime's health to be a little larger than the vanilla one, so it actually adds up all the slime's health from each different level. Like, as you know, when you split a larger slime into 4, it actually starts again. So after you kill the biggest slime, let's say 4 smaller ones appear, and so on. So this allows you to basically simplify slimes. Okay, now we come to chunk analyze. This feature is inoffensive. It won't do anything for your server. But if you have a very custom server, or a server where you know that the gameplay is different than vanilla servers, I suggest setting it up correctly. This is because the chunk analyzer allows you to set different values for what you think different types of tile entities and normal entities cause lag. So, for example, you can set how much you think beacon's gonna lag and so on, and they may depend on how your server works. So for example, if you use mob spawners as a building block, let's say you have a mini game or I don't know what, you might want to set the mob spawner from 60 to 0, or even disable it just because you built with it and there would be false positives. Or if you think that you have custom beacons and they are more complex than normal beacons, you can just raise the score, and this will help it be more accurate. Also, the amount here, which is spelled wrong, I had to fix it in the future. This allows you to set how many chunks you will see in LagAssist chunk analyze. So I set it to 10 because it doesn't clog up so much space, and usually when you want to actually clean the chunks for yourself manually, you would go through each separate one, and after you fix, let's say, the 10 of these, you would go and run it again and see if the problem is still there. Okay, now let's go to the chunk manager. The chunk manager is a little interesting system. It's a really interesting system that allows you to set your view distance in your Minecraft server to be dynamic. But I mean that when you have many players, and obviously this means many chunks are loaded, then the view distance will be set to a lower number. And this will improve your performance, obviously, because there are less entities, because the world is smaller, chunks aren't sent so much, and so on. And this system is pretty interesting because when you have very few players, the amount of view distance they will have will be much larger than when you have many players, and that's a good thing when you want your players to have the best experience possible, because why wouldn't you want to have a more maximum view distance? You can see farther, you can find a place for your home, and so on, while and it's not going to annoy normal players, because yeah, it's not going to annoy anything. It's going to be helpful for a server, and it's not going to lag, because when you have many players, your view distance will scale down, sorry, and yeah, the amount of chunks that players will see will be around the same. Okay, then we have lag measures. The lag measures is not that configurable right now, but it actually, I mean, it is, but the settings are not available here. And this actually means how often the LagAssist will check for your TPS and run features to try to get rid of that lag automatically without help from somebody else. If you want, let's say, to disable it, you can just I think you can set it to -1, but I'm not sure here. If not, you could just set it to a large number, and it will obviously not work. And uh, you can also set the announcer so players can see what when lag cleaning has occurred, but it's pretty useless because LagAssist doesn't really break anything. So even with the default settings, I never had players complain about the redstone being destroyed, even though that's a feature in LagAssist that is by default. And the test was done on a 100-player server on Gamester Survival 1.8. And this allows staff messages, so this will show a more exact messages. So for example, it will show this feature, and this feature had run, and nothing else. The redstone color is one of the most advanced features in LagAssist because it allows you to change how redstone is cold, and this allows you to get rid of almost any lag machine. I'll go as fast as I can through it. So to sum it up, the breaker sets it so it actually breaks redstone. Um, I think I will remove it in the future because I have this chance and you can set it to 0. But the breaker system basically allows redstone to break once in a few runs. So how this system works is basically for each change in the redstone mechanism. So let's say the redstone goes from being off to redstone being on, or redstone goes from on to off. Only this is checked. So if a machine is only checked on, is only on or only off, or doesn't change while the call is working, it will not have any effect on that. And that's obvious. If the redstone doesn't update, it doesn't lag. So this checks for update. And this has a 3% chance of breaking redstone. And this means that once 100 updates, there will be around 3 redstone powders or redstone repeaters or so on that will get broken down. And why this is really useful for most servers is because redstone, if you use it too much, it will lag your server. And while the redstone cooler will stop lag machines, if it wouldn't break anything, it wouldn't deny the people from just resetting the machine, pressing a button, and yet again you have lag. So this automatically breaks some redstone, and if you have a large machine, obviously large machines are the most probable to cause lag, that updates very often, which is obviously a clock, sorry, then obviously this will have an effect on it. But if it's a small machine that like a small clock, the chance is very small. So for example, if you have a clock that only works, let's say 10 seconds and then stops, it has a very small chance of detecting it. So this is a very good feature for most server owners, but for some people they don't want it to be available. So you would just set the chance to 0 and set the breaker to false, and that's it. This is the redstone color text. So this is a little more simple, but it's also very important. So basically this means how much the redstone color will wait to see if there are redstone changes. If you set it to low, then it may not disable redstone for the whole machine, but it will work much better with the destructive checks. If you set it very high, then obviously it's going to annoy players because redstone will be disabled for a while. And the destructive checks that I was talking about allow you to destroy large like machines, like the one here. It's observer-like machines. Like observers are not considered redstone, so basically plugins that just clean redstone or redstone clocks can't really detect observers. LagAssist found a way to fix it, and the destructive checks allow you to basically destroy, to nuke all the observers that have more than 16 changes in the time of the redstone color. This is pretty inoffensive. I mean, on survival servers, it's no big deal. Nobody will have so many observers to do a lag machine from it. But on a creative server, it's really useful. That's exactly why it was implemented. We had a creative contest on Gamster, and we had like 100 players. And the idea is the best builders will get money. It was well, it was sponsored by us, and a large builder organized it basically. Got the jury and so on. The max TPS allow you to set what's the maximum TPS that this check will run at. So, for example, each time the monitor works, the monitor that I was explaining, I think it's here, yeah. The monitor here will only activate the check if the TPS at that certain moment is under the max TPS here. So this is the same for everything. So basically, set it smaller to run it only when the server lags more. So if it's over 19, it won't do anything when you run the monitor. The hopper check is really simple. It disables hoppers from crafting, and this also allows you to break hoppers sometimes. It's not a recommended feature because it doesn't work so well, even more so on Spigot, but you can use it if you really have an issue with hoppers, and paper doesn't fix it for you because I really suggest using that. Okay. The limiter feature allows you to limit how many mobs you can spawn per chunk. This doesn't limit all mobs, so naturally spawning mobs won't work, but some people told me that breeding mobs still works, but I'm not sure of that. But that's what I heard. So the total limit allows you to set the maximum limit of entities in that chunk, and per limit allows you to set a per entity type limit, and this goes on for tiles too. So tiles are chests, furnaces, hoppers, most blocks with special things like, let's say, signs, and you can limit, let's say, placing signs with this, or placing chests with this, or even placing hoppers in a certain chunk. Gosh, my throat hurts. Okay, the spawner check is also pretty complex, but it's also easy to set up. So basically, this allows you to set spawners to break sometimes. It's on false because it's not really useful. This just enables the whole spawner check. This is the chance for spawners to break, and this allows you to set custom settings for spawners. So, for example, make them spawn later or spawn less often. And if you have a very large server with very many spawners that are vanilla, spawners like plugins like Apex spawners have their own settings for this, and LagAssist has no way of changing that except if I infringe that guy and basically overwrite what I do, and that's not okay. So basically, this changes the spawners to be slower or to spawn less mobs, and it can be set in such a way to relieve some of that lag caused by too many spawners, because this was also implemented for Gamster. They had a very bad idea, and they made spawners very, very cheap, and everybody had lots of them, and the server was lagging because of that. This pretty much fixed it. I mean, the TPS were around 15, and after I added this, it was around 20, and now people stopped using spawners so much, but yeah, we changed the economy, but still, it's a really useful feature if you have issues with spawners. The knife physics feature is it's pretty interesting. This allows you to disable when server starts, and you can use it to disable some features. Some people have had issues with this because it disables explosions, melting pistons, fire, redstone, not even node blocks, because yeah, the thing with the destructive tracks and redstone, it's the same thing. This was an older fix, or at least improvement, but it's not bad to have it. And the liquid spread, this is what people really have issues about. So if you want it to be disabled, just set it to false, and that's it. It won't do that. And another thing you can do is just enable to true if you want to disable this by default. So for example, if your server doesn't have explosions by default, just disable it. Or if you don't want grass to spread, which is pretty obvious why you have a minigame server, let's say, you can also do that, and so on. The benchmark system, this goes into a more complex thing, and this basically uses the FTP server from speedtest tele2net, which I found on the internet. It's a speedtest server using FTP, and it basically downloads this 50 megabyte zip and tells you how much time it took for that. The uploader, from what I know, it uploads a 50 megabytes file. The random one generates a random file that's not already available on the FTP server, because the FTP server from the Tele2Net thing is also used by other people, and this means that the upload folder is filled by movies, by random things, and this generates a random UID, so you make sure that you're always or 1 in a trillion percent unsure that it's not going to work. So yeah, the chance for it to work is basically every time. And this is how much size it should have. So it explains here with the bytes and everything. So this allows you to set the upload file to be larger. So if you want more exact features, but you don't mind waiting a little bit more, or a little bit much more on the benchmark, then just enable this. The blacklisted worlds allow you to disable most of LagAssist's features on some worlds. So for example, if you want your redstone world not to have redstone disabled, or your main lobby world, like in Skyblock, I had a client asking for this. So if you want that disabled, you can do it here. The log cleaner allows you to clean logs, and not only logs, you can clean almost anything, as long as obviously you have access to it. So for example, you can clean a plugin, so you can do plugin / let's say no cheat plus and then logs, so on, and this will change the log, this will delete logs of Node.js Plus 2, but it works better with logs that happen each day, and obviously that don't get too huge because that will remove it. It's the max size. You can set it to -1 to remove it, but yeah. And that's the stats bar. Oh, another thing. Many people think it's not going well because it's fluctuating a lot. I mean, if you use it, you'll see that even if your server is working fine, you might see it has 3 TPS or so on. And that's really strange for people that don't understand how it works. But basically, the TPS interval, if it's smaller, it's more precise. So it detects smaller fluctuations in the TPS. This may be alarming for some people, but it's no big deal. If you set the interval larger, so for example, for this means half a second. So basically, this is not ticks per second. This is half the percent of ticks per half a second multiplied by 2. So that's why. It's much more accurate. And you can set it to 100, like 5 seconds. That would basically mitigate the issue. It wouldn't fluctuate so much. But I set it to this because I can check if a feature is laggy just a little bit. I can just check, like for example, load a chunk or do anything, and I'll see the little fluctuations. So that's exactly why the stats bar is working like this. Okay. The lag map. This is the lag map which you get by LagAssist get map, and a fully reserved allows you to fully reserved filled map with the 0 data file, and this basically allows you to place lag map at spawn. I had a client really eager to do that, like place the lag map at spawn so people can see like how the TPS works, and I guess not complain about lag when it's actually their fault because of large ping or bad connection or so on. And this is basically it. Actually not, but let me be quick because I have to go to school, and I should be hurrying up because usually I'm kind of 1 minute late. Okay, so these are the settings. This allows me to enable the client-side optimizations, which basically allow you to improve your faction server experience. I've seen many dedicated plugins doing this, like for factions, let's say, and they cost a lot. There is a plugin on Spig, really. I'm not sure its name but I saw it recently. It has around 40 downloads, and it's exactly doing what LagAssist does, and it costs even more. And I said, well, this is not so hard. I mean, it is hard to implement, to be honest, but once you get it working, it's not so hard to develop on and improve. So I said, well, let's add it to LagAssist. So let's make LagAssist a complete solution to fix everything from client side to server side lag, and this basically improves TPS. So disabling this is the default. You have the /optimize command, which basically allow you to open the client optimize feature, and this should be given to players or VIP people or whoever you want to be able to improve their TPS by using this. And basically this disables TNT entities, so you only see the explosions, and this really helps when you have large cannon. Yeah. The sand disables falling sand. Particles disables particles. Well, custom particles, not all particles. So for example, if you have a plugin like block particles that has a lot of particles, you can use it to disable particles to some players that seem it laggy, because I had it on my own server. I also have my own server, Side Gamster, which I work for, and players were complaining a lot about me using too many particles, and some lagging, some not, and yeah, this feature really helps with that. Pistons disables piston animation, that was also requested, and yeah. And I think that's it for the config files. If you need more in detail help, you can read, but this was pretty decent, and I think I've explained most of the things. So this is the video. I hope you have a nice day, and if you have any more questions, just ask me on Discord. Many times than not, like I said, there are more features than most people think, and yeah, just ask me, and there might be something I can help you with.